Hi guys, welcome back to Crafty Not Shifty. Today I'm going to be recreating this pink baby card. I need two of these. One is for a christening and one is for a new baby. As you can see, I've matted the outside and the inside of this card with pink and white paper to keep with the girly baby theme. So here's the supplies that you're going to need. You'll need 2 pieces of pink cardstock measured at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, 2 pieces of white cardstock at 4 inches by 5 1/4, 2 pink squares at 2 inches and 2 white squares at 1 3/4 inches. You'll also need some pearls for embellishment. You could use sequins or liquid pearls if you prefer. I've also got this embossing folder here from Sizzix, this cute feet stamp. I'm not too sure what brand this is. I think I got it at Hobbycraft. I've got a congratulations stamp, which is from the Simon Says Stamp Congratulations stamp set. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is emboss part of this first piece. I don't want the bottom section to emboss, so when I put it through my Texture Boutique, I'm going to have part of the embossing folder hanging out of the plate so it's not sandwiched in between that pressure and it won't come out with an embossed image on it. So there you can see that bottom section is nice and blank and we've got the swirl pattern at the top. So I'm going to use some glimmer mist to add some subtle kind of sparkle to that white card panel. I'm using the pearl colour. So now I'll get started on the stamping. So the first thing that I'm going to stamp is the feet, and first as I'm going to emboss this, I'll use my embossing buddy, which applies a small amount of powder to make sure that the embossing powder only sticks to the sections that you want it to. So I'm using a tinted embossing pad here, so you should be able to see the image once I get that stamped. And I'm just using my Martha Stewart stamp press for this small image. There we go, and I'm just going to cover that with some pink embossing powder. This is the Wendy Vici embossing powder and it's a really nice pink colour. So I'm just using my paintbrush to remove any little flecks of embossing powder that I didn't want to be there. And while that's still hot, I'm going to pour on a second layer of the embossing powder to really make that image pop up. Once that's all done, you can dump the leftover embossing powder straight back into the jar. And I'm going to bring back the emboss piece, and the glimmer mist has dried completely now. So I'm just laying out my ribbon and my stamp so I can position that, and as the stamp hangs slightly over the edge of the panel, I'm using a piece of scrap paper underneath, picking up the stamp with my Fiskars stamp press and again inking it up with the tinted embossing powder. So the Fiskars stamp press is really good for larger stamps and for making sure that you can pick them up nice and straight, because nobody wants to have a wonky sentiment on the front of their card. So I'm just pouring the embossing powder on, and I didn't actually ink the stamp up perfectly, so there's a couple of gaps, but I'm going to use my Emboss It pen from Ranger. So once I've got the powder embossed the first time, I'm just colouring in any blank sections with this pen. It has the same embossing ink as the stamp pad does, and then I can pour on the powder and re-emboss that, and now the sentiment's perfect. So if you don't have one of those Emboss It pens, you can just re-ink the stamp and stamp that straight down on top. So I'm using my Scotch ATG gun now to stick down my stamped feet onto the pink panel. And then I'm going to take my pearls and I'm going to apply 4 of them, 1 in each of the corners of the square. So I'm going to be using these as they come, which is white, but you can use your alcohol ink markers to colour over the top of these to permanently change them into a different colour, which is really useful. I'm going to apply some adhesive foam tape now to the back of the panel, and as this card is going to be going through the post, I am applying quite a lot. You could use craft foam cut into the same size square if you like, but I've just chosen to use the foam dots. So I'm going to apply my ribbon now. I'm putting some ATG onto each end, and I'm using the grid on my grid mat to line that ribbon up perfectly so it's nice and straight across the front of the card. As this panel's been embossed, I'm going to use score tape rather than my ATG tape to stick it to the pink panel. I just think it has a little bit stronger of a hold, and I'm just peeling up each of those edges before I stick across the horizontal piece to make sure that there's tape right up until each of the corners of this panel. As I say, it's been embossed, so the surface is slightly uneven, so you want to make sure that it sticks down really well to the card base and it doesn't peel up at all. If you don't have score tape, you certainly could use your ATG gun, or you could use wet glue as well. So I'm peeling off the backing of this double-sided score tape, and I'm just going to line that up on top of the pink panel, and stick that down nice and centered. Okay, so I am placing the stamped panel in the center and we're almost done. I'm just going to tie a small ribbon out of the same ribbon that was used to go across the front of the card, and I'm actually cheating a little bit. I'm going to tie that ribbon separately and then glue that onto the card panel rather than trying to wrap the ribbon around and tie a bow at the same time. I just find that it's a little bit easier to get a nice bow this way. And I'll just use the weight of my stamp press to hold that in place while the glue dries. So moving on to the inside section of the card, I'm going to adhere the white panel to the pink panel and then glue both of those panels to the inside of my card. And get that nice and centered, and then I can take the front panel and apply some HEG tape once again and glue that down to the front. As a finishing touch, I'm going to take my Ranger Glossy Accents, which I've got in this fine line applicator bottle, and I'm going to apply glossy accents just to that heart that's in the middle of those cute little stamped feet. So that's it, we're done with the card. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you have, please hit like so YouTube knows you want to see more of the same, and hit subscribe so you never miss a video from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you have any questions or queries, please do leave them in the comments section. I really enjoy hearing from you guys. And if you want to double check any of the sizes and dimensions, they're all listed on my blog, which is linked below.